See, as far as I'm concerned, this logic can be given anytime by anyone. क्यों? And let me explain why. So, what might be hate speech for someone might be free speech for the other. I'm giving you the devil's advocate. What might be free speech for X side might be hate speech for Y side, like they say. So, how do you define in a very tangible manner that what you guys are calling secular blasphemy? Like, you have to give me examples to make your case.
Sure. Can I come in?
Sure.
So I would like to give two examples. Let's start with the blockbuster movie starring one of India's most known celebrity stars, or one of the most big names actors, Amir Khan. If we take PK, right now, it can be argued, but obviously that's not factually correct, that ultimately the movie did take a dig across religions, and it took a dig against regressive aspects of all belief systems. But the truth be told, if you watch the movie, 90% of it is basically taking a fun dig, a so-called enlightened dig at Hinduism, right? And in a Hindu majority country only, where the superstar's faith is that of a Muslim, it does not matter to the majority community, quote unquote majority community, because it's not majority across the spectrum of 29, 30 odd states. Now, that movie is celebrated. That movie is a blockbuster. So it's clear that it's not that the second largest community or the third largest community or the fourth largest community ensured that it had such roaring numbers. Right. Now, the counter argument to this is, would you be able to make a similar movie with at that canvas and 90% of it taking digs at India's second largest community, or even third largest, which is just 5% of the population, around 7 to 8 CR, which is Christians, or even the fourth largest, which is the Sikh community? You won't be able to. Not possible, not a chance in hell. So the larger question then why don't we start off objectively with the fact that and I'm not, of course, backing or validating Jinnah's arguments that these are two different civilizations, two different communities, two different this, but at least have the objectivity, at least have the honesty in saying that larger pattern of this community with regards to the other three back behind it is different. The duality of thought is ingrained from the day the child is born into it, and he sees that as the normalcy of life. What he mistakes it is that he feels that the rest of the major communities on the world also operate like that. No, they don't. Individuals amongst them who are trying to ensure that there is more tolerance there are making that effort. But in the first faith, it is by de facto a part of it. I always say this to a lot of people. It's a beautiful paradox that the biggest strength of that person who's born into Hindu faith is also his biggest weakness. And what is that? That is that you can accommodate 100 truths, you can accommodate 100 perspectives, and tell all those perspectives, I am ready to accommodate you, and you can have a different viewpoint. But amongst that, are you unwillingly or even willingly accommodating those truths which negate all your other 99 truths? And that is the core issue. And this is beyond all this, BJP, Congress, TMC, left, and all. These are civilizational issues. And these political parties some have just been there for a few decades. Something like AAP has just been there for 10 years. But these civilizational issues between how communities uh, function with each other, how ideological things function with each other, these are patterns across centuries. And that should be the core of it. You see people only talking about symptoms. You see people only putting it in binary of, oh my god, majority, minority, and then provocation and this and that and falana dhimka. The truth is that there is so much of this haze amongst the largest community that there is no clarity over it. You look at the fact that if that happens, PK happens. Another example I would give is Munawar Faruqi, a person from so-called victimized community. You can get away with the worst jokes on Godra, where there are 4-year-old kids, 2-year-old kids, 8-year-old kids burned to death. Women, innocent civilian men. You can crack a joke. Irony, irony. People in the crowd sitting are Hindus who are laughing at it. Two ways to look at it: either enlightened or self loathing, or both, or ignorant, right? Then it doesn't stop there. He goes for the jugular. He even takes a funny dig against Lord Ram and Sita. Nothing happens. On the contrary, any resistance shown to it, the ones who take the legal route are painted as evil. The guy goes on to win one of the biggest popular reality shows, celebrated by India. Fair enough. Now the counter is, instead of, if it was even Munawar or it was some Hindu comedian who would have done the reverse, what do you see? And we have an example: All India Bakchod, so-called speaking truth to power in terms of comedy. They apologized not to the second largest community. They wrote a apology to the third largest community for one line in a roast which was somewhere seemed offensive to the sensibilities of the church. You can Google it. There's a video. All those so-called liberated, hippie, enlightened Tier 1 city dudes, famous, are sitting and they tender an apology to the father, right? Why even stop there? Let's go to the fourth community. You have interacted with noted journalist Swati Goel Sharma. She's covered Punjab extensively. You have seen the killings over Betbi, which have happened in the last 1 year. And how tricky a terrain is it? A poor guy, poor Hindu boy who was mentally unstable. I feel sad right now, even talking about that. That visual is imprinted in my mind. You kill him. You just and you kill him, and he said he did Bedbi, which is blasphemy equivalent. So the question is that when it is more or less non-existence amongst the first community, it is prevalent heavily in second, it has its traces, doses in third and fourth, then at least there should be some clarity amongst the Hindu mind that these are different communities. These are different patterns. They operate differently. Yes, individual rights is a great thing. But to not have clarity over how different systems work, how an open source system is different to a closed source system, to how they intermingle with each other and what are the real life consequences, I think that at least should be the starting. That should be like the basic understanding. And what gets passed off as secularism in India? What gets passed off is, you have a communist in Pratik Sinha. Ask him someday, does anybody ask him that, does he condemn, and I'm not saying this is the former Prime Minister of India, Mr. Manmohan Singh, who said it somewhere in 2009, that the biggest danger that India faces is left-wing terrorism. There was a time where it was spread across 10 of our states. Just because it is not there in Tier 1 cities. In Tier 1 cities, they have political sciences wing of JNU, they have Jadavpur, they have TIS, where the propaganda ideological material goes on. But in the villages, in places like Gachiroli, in all those interiors, the amount of Jawans we've lost in the action of duty is more than any Islamist terror attack as well. Have you ever seen this cabal, of which you have this new star in Pratik Sinha, groomed by likes of Kavita Krishnan, Arundhati Roy? They will never ever say that this is wrong. We might disagree with some rogue security officers in the Indian Army, but as an institution also they don't own it up. And what are you told that is secularism? That every secessionist terror movement, whether that is Islamist, whether that is left-wing terrorism, or whether that's any secessionist movement wants to come, break it into, these guys are your representatives. And the decoy is what? Decoys are these Hindu-sounding names, And who does he team up with? He teams up with like a Mumtaz Qadri of India, Mohammed Zubair, who puts blasphemy targets on everyone. He's the online version of it. Even a state like Pakistan ensured that Mumtaz Qadri was buried on 29th February, so that there was no day that they could celebrate him, because there were sections of it. But can you imagine? I see Hindus here who donate to Mohammed Zubair and then say, "Wow, bhai, I am with you in truth." So you are saying literally that you are with the likes of the Indian versions of Mumtaz Qadri and that other foul-mouthed guy they had. I forget his name, Khadim Rizvi. So this is what secularism has boiled down in India. What kind of secularism is this? See, fine, I get it. The average person is religiously sentimental, more so in the second largest community, and then in the third and fourth and fifth. First one is not. But then either say that sentiments across all communities are same, and let's just keep very, very narrow window of freedom of expression, or say that across communities it's the same. And when some people from the majority community just resist in asking for equality, these same very communists like Pratik Sinha and Mohammed Zubair, like Islamists, who are shown as this Hindu Muslim, but you're seeing what they're representing. They're representing communists who want to break up India. They're representing Islamists who want to break up India, right? They say that equality is also oppression. So I don't find anything wrong when the majority community, because of which the country is secular, and it's very open fact. There is nothing, like, it's not a sentimental comment you're making, because the two countries that were carved out after breaking this country into three could not be secular. Yes, Bangladesh relatively, according to the pitiable standards of secularism, but nowhere does it come close to India. So the point that this self-loathing Hindu and this confrontational Muslim has been thrusted on the soul of India as secular, and in the last 8 years at least there's this first genuine challenge to it, is suddenly being shown as कि भाई यहाँ तो intolerance हो गया. No, the intolerance तुम में हो गया because अब तुम्हारी intolerance को call out कर. I still agree that everyone doesn't think on the same lines. You feel offended by somebody hurting your religious sentiments, take the legal route. I applaud all those people who've taken the legal route, who are giving challenging arguments to what former BJP spokesperson Duprishna. I completely am with that. But if you're going to make calls for violence, if you're going to make calls for beheading, if you're going to make calls, if you're going to riot like what you've done today in so many places, it's sad. I had a friend from UK. Her father runs a store in Ranchi, and she was telling me that, do you know what's happening? And then she's like, I'm so worried he's not reached his home. And an hour later, she said he reached. So the thing here is that this cabal, represented by these new breed, because the godmothers are people like Arundhati Roy and all. You look at this, and Arfa Khanum Shirbani can get away working for the Wire, in which essentially, if you read the literature of Wire, somehow or the other, every week, every day, there is something or the other where they'll indirectly or very smartly take a dig at Hinduism, or she will, mock Hindu gods. She will go about it, right? And not once, she's done it many a times. So has Rana Ayub. Okay. So what you're asking people to do is bear this up. But when it comes to anything, whether rightly or wrongly, towards their faith, they will give calls to the mobs on the ground to burn down everything. So I think in a way, the only silver lining here is that at least now you're seeing how this cabal works. You're seeing how they have kept double standards, and because of which there's this churn happening. And at the end of the day, take the legal recourse, man. Anybody and everyone, whoever thinks, take the legal recourse, and don't mistake this alliance between a self-loathing Hindu and a confrontational Muslim as the Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb. It's not. You ask them other bigger ideological questions. And second thing, if I mean those Hindus who back guys like these, the Khadim Rizvis and the Qadris, why don't you back the moderate voices within? Why don't we are not, like, then they have this whole conditioning. If we back them, then we are supporting the extremist Hindu. Then by that logic, if you're backing them, you're supporting the extremist Muslim, right? So what we are saying is that just like within your community, right, you have people who are ready to say, okay, fine, we're not going to tolerate those guys who are going to call for open genocide of Muslims, and we're just going to sit and say, okay, no. But give the chance in the other community also, even if the numbers are less. Give them the chance. Give chance to Islamic scholars who are truly moderate. The greatest Islamic scholar from the Indian subcontinent in the last 70 years, arguably, Padma Vibhushan Maulana Waizuddin Khan. That's the second highest honor Indian government gives. You read his literature, you read his interpretations, you read his take on blasphemy. Very clearly says that you only have the legal route, you only have the word to word route, you only have the argument route. If not him, even read the greatest which has come out from Pakistan, Javed Ghamdi. It's the same argument. Even read some of the ones from Arab. But the thing is, it's ironic. It must not happen in any other country that those Hindus who are supposed to be secular, supporting voices like this, supporting moderates who are saying, look at this, how very tolerant is it? All Amana asked was that go ahead, file cases, that's your right. And I understand, we also condemn the tone because ultimately that kind of tone doesn't help, right? Uspe bhi usko, very those people, those Muslims who are supporters of people like Zubair and Pratik said ki now let's see, you'll also soon see something and all that. So this whole, sorry for the word, bastardization of secularism in India is the problem. And that is what we call
You don't
secular
have to
blasphemy.
apologize to swear on my podcast. Please swear profusely.
So I think that is what the lies at the crux of this whole thing, that secular blasphemy is problematic in India. And once this core is solved, then you can go to the symptoms. Otherwise, there's symptoms, politics, you have to look at it as clash of civilizations between different belief systems. And you have to understand that what will you have to do more ahead. And also, I want to tell those Hindus, there was someone today telling me where we were saying we were asking our community members not to riot, not to be violent, right? And somebody came to me and he was speaking down to me. नहीं नहीं ये तो तुम तो ऐसे हो. And I'm like, how is that going to solve any problem, man? तू तो शेर बैठा हुआ है ट्विटर पे, मुझे भी बोल रहा है, मैं तो फिर भी कोशिश कर रहा हूँ कि कम्युनिटीज के बीच में ठीक रहे, अमन रहे, शांति रहे, एक इंटेलेक्चुअल ऑनेस्टी रहे, राइट? ये झूठ दिखावा ना हो. And he comes and attacks me. You will have to back at least, even if there are just 100 on Twitter and FB, who are speaking, then back them na yaar. We also want to stay, we also want to have coexist. We are not calling for another sort of extremism, chhod hi do mazhab ye. But high time, man. जिनके साथ रहते हो दिन भर, जिनके साथ हर किस्म का रिश्ता है, थियोलॉजिकल जो प्रॉब्लम है उसको एड्रेस तो करो, उससे बात तो करो. उसको कारपेट के नीचे छुपा दोगे, उसको ऐसे रिप्रेजेंटेटिव्स दोगे जो कि चाहते ही है कि हर किस्म से देश का ही हो. तो आई एम अपीलिंग टू बोथ द कम्युनिटीज. एक में वो जो गुमराह है कि जो वो समझते हैं सेकुलरिज्म वो है, और दूसरे में वो कि जो अप्रिशिएट ही नहीं करते कि किस ग्रेट कंट्री में. तो दैट्स माय वर्ड ऑन सेकुलर क्लास.